Welcome to the Archway of Hope podcast. My name is Chip Wilson, and I will be your host, where we cover things from loss, grief, and providing hope for those who have lost someone too early. Well, we are truly excited to start this new podcast for Archway of Hope. And some of you that are listening might think, okay, who is Archway of Hope? Well, let me start by introducing some of the guests that are here today. We have Jimmy Herring, who's on the board of Archway of Hope. I'm Chip Wilson, the host of the podcast, and also a board member of Archway of Hope. It's Paul Allison, also a board member of Archway of Hope, and Dr. Christy Donaldson, who's our guest today and also our subject matter expert on this podcast. So I think we should start. One of the main things is to explain what is Archway of Hope, why was it started, what's our intent, and the goal of this. And so with that, I think I'll ask Jimmy, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and then how Archway of Hope came about.
Yeah, so if we go back 7.5 years, I think that's probably the kickoff point for all of us being here. And in fact, prior to that time, I had no idea who Chip was or Dr. Donaldson. So as we move along a little bit, I'll express some of the good things that have come out the beginning of this, and that relates back to the tragic death of my son, December 28, 2015. And so at that time, I'm Rhett's dad, and at that time, life was kind of falling apart. Didn't really know where my wife and I and kids were headed, what was going on. So in the middle of a lot of grief, there were some folks around us that originally wanted to start the Rhett Revolution. And folks around us, Paul's with us today. He and a close group of friends got that Rhett Revolution off the ground and started. And shortly after that, we became what's locally known as a charity champion. And at that point, we got introduced to Chip, who was leading the charity champions presentations at the time. And I always remember Chip standing on the stage saying, "I can help you. I can help this group." And what we all found very interesting, and this is probably 3 years into the Rhett Revolution, 3 years post Rhett's death, I always found it interesting that there was a group of people at our local Ridgewood Country Club. There were probably 15 other groups there, but I always felt like, and so did the group with the Rhett Revolution, felt like Chip was pointing us out. He singled us out, that there was something about the Rhett Revolution that he found intriguing, interesting, unique. And so we began to feel a little, I don't want to say special, but we began to feel a little different when he said, "I can help you." And so we took him up on it. We said, "What are you talking about? What do you mean you can help us?" Because we had the desire to take the Rhett Revolution, which originally was about spreading hope, love, kindness, joy in any ways imaginable. But with a group of just pure volunteers, we were bouncing around, hitting the walls quite a bit, and still doing a good job, we thought, helping people as we could. But I think Chip had a vision for us that was more narrow, even more unique. And from that, we kind of spun off from the Rhett Revolution, which still exists today. It's still blowing and going in the McGregor and surrounding community. But out of that, we formed Archway of Hope, which is now specifically designed to provide hope and help to people who have lost someone too soon. And so that brings us to where we are now, and we've managed to attract some followers, some sponsors. We've had some fundraising events. And most importantly, after, a year and a half, headed towards 2 full years, I think we've really are starting to find our groove and how we can really bring hope and help to people who have lost someone too soon. So this is just another really big piece. I am extremely excited about what we are trying to accomplish today and carry forward. Personally, I think that having a professional grief counselor, as we've recruited Dr. Donaldson to be part of our group with us, I'm really excited about that. I know from my own path, my wife Lorna, her own path, and even our children now, we're learning how much professional counseling is part of the grief process, how it's just imperative. You got to have it to deal with the loss of someone too soon. So I'm really excited about being here today and being joined by you and whoever else we might bring on in the weeks to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Paul, you've been a part of the Charity Champions. You were part of Red Revolution and part of the startup of Archway of Hope. From your perspective, do you have anything to add?
What's interesting is that Jimmy talked about our relationship with you and getting involved with Charity Champions, and through that, what was interesting is you were able to actually put language to everything we were feeling and all the things that we wanted to try to accomplish, but we couldn't really narrow it down into a mission statement or anything like that. And you were able to say, I know what y'all are trying to do is offer hope to people who have lost someone too early. And when you did that, when you said that, I think we all went, yeah, I think Chip can help us. And I think we all know, and maybe everybody doesn't know this, that Chip owns a company called 360 Solutions. So for the last 25 years, he's been in the business of clarifying strategy and leading organizations in a specific direction. And so through his experience and through all the things he's gone through and all the things he's taught over the last 25 years, we felt like Chip was the right fit for our company, our organization, I'm sorry. And so ever since we got hooked up with you, we've been on the right track. And so we're excited about that.
Yeah. Well, again, if this is your first time listening, this is our first episode kind of explaining who we are and what we do. There's a couple of different levels, but the primary thing that we're really focused on is effective storytelling to provide hope through other people's experiences. And we started with Rhett Herring, and we did a documentary. It was a little over an hour, and it's been powerful. It's on the YouTube channel under Archway of Hope YouTube channel, and we posted it, didn't really boost it or anything, and we've head over today. It's been a couple of months, 66,000 views, hundreds upon hundreds of comments of messages of hope. People watching it stumbled across it and said, this has been incredible. Blessings to everybody. We've had a couple that have said, this has saved my life. This is exactly what I was looking for, which only invigorates us even more to do even more of it. So now we're doing multiple stories a year. We're about, if you're listening to this, we're about to introduce one in Lubbock on Jackson. This weekend, we did another one with Cordelia Sloan, and we have more planned throughout the year. And the documentary itself is designed to do two things. One is create a legacy piece for the family. And if I haven't mentioned, there's no cost to the family whatsoever. The only thing they have to invest is their time. And we create this as a legacy piece to remember their child and the wonderful things about the life of their child. And then, or anyone, it's only been children to date. We'll probably have additional stories in the future. But and then the second component and why we do it is because it's hopefully providing hope for those who have lost someone too early. That, Jimmy, and I'm going to come back to you for just 1 second. This whole idea to me started when you and Lorna shared your experience of right after losing Rhett, your exhaustive search for looking for resources and the limited amount.
Yeah, so I can vividly remember, and maybe it was December 30th at the latest, 2015. So Rhett's been dead for a day or two. And again, my brain was at a loss, not just my mental and emotional state, but physical as well. We're doing all we can do just to stay alive, to stay upright. And I distinctly remember Lorna and I sitting up in bed in one of those mornings where you wake up and you think, is this real? And it doesn't take long to figure out that it is real. And I don't know if it's just me or maybe it's, now you hear, well, it's the way men think. But my first inclination was, I can fix this. I know there's got to be a way I can fix this. If I can just find the resources, I can fix it. I can fix it now. And if this is supposed to take 10 years, then by me going and searching and finding the right resources, then I can fix it in a year. Maybe I can fix it in 6 months or a month or even a week, because I was just so fretting, not only for myself, but for my wife and my kids and my mom and dad and all these people around us. Is we can't survive like this. So we've got to, again, fix it. And I began to start Googling, you get on the internet, and I was sitting there and up in bed in my iPad trying to find out all the resources I could find. And surprisingly, there was so little available. Really, the only thing I came up with that morning and beyond that were a few pastors who had given sermons about loss. And that's really all I could find. And I did, in my best, I listened to a few of those sermons, but boy, it didn't take long that morning, and I was done, computer closed, and really never came back to that, feeling, I guess, dejected and somewhat defeated, of thinking, well, that's out the door. That's not going to solve anything. The idea of looking and finding something just doesn't exist, so on to the next. And I don't really remember what on to the next was, but it certainly wasn't to find any resources, just not available.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me that story along with Lorna and thinking, okay, how do we create resources? How do we create something so that if the next person, unfortunately, is in the same situation you are and they do go to their iPad and Google help, hopefully they find us, and hopefully we can create enough resources to be able to provide hope for those who lose someone too early. The one thing that we do know, Paul and myself and others that sit on the board, is that we're not an expert in grief. That's not our thing. We, unfortunately, Jimmy's in this position because of Rhett. I am not in that position, or Paul yet, or hopefully never, but we want to help, and we know that storytelling is important, and we all have gifts that have been given to us, but being a professional at it is not one of those. So we invited Dr. Christy Donaldson to be a part of our team and to help us launch this podcast and bring a level of expertise in your background, experience, and education to help us with this. So, again, welcome. We're excited to have you here. I know the next handful of episodes will all be focused around different ways to deal with it. But when you found out about Archway of Hope and what we do, what was your initial feeling towards this group?
We need this. First of all, thank you for having me as a part of this team. I believe greatly in information. I understand that that feeling of needing to find something that helps you to make sense of your world in that moment when nothing does. And I think also something that you said just reminded me about the grieving process, even when you were even talking about how to put it into words about what y'all were needing as Archway of Hope. And I think that's exactly what a grieving individual goes through too. You can't even formulate the words to be able to express exactly how you feel to somebody else, much less somebody know how to tell you or help you in that moment exactly the way that you need to be held. It's very personal and individualized to each person. And so, one topic at one point will be meaningful to one person, and then it might be meaningful to somebody else several weeks later, but just having this out there and a place for people to listen and find some kind of solace and understanding in other people's experiences is just, a human nature and a connector for each of us. Whether you've ever experienced grief, or you want to know more about how people grieve or how people are experiencing life in this way, or you've had a friend or a loved one who's experienced it, I think anytime you can find something like this, it has great meaning and depth for more connecting ways with others, So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we're really excited about this podcast. I'll ask anybody who's listening to this to please go to our website, archwayofhope.org. There's resources there. Connect with us. If you have people that you know that would be great for us to interview on this podcast, or someone who has lost someone too early, we really would love to get in touch with them in some way, whether it's through an email or connect somehow. We're on Facebook, all the other social media channels. We have a YouTube channel where we post our documentaries and stories of hope. So there's multiple ways to get involved with this. We're a small startup, couple years old, but we know that grief is universal. Doesn't matter what language you speak, what country you live in. If you experience grief, it's one of the universal principles that we all feel, and we deal with it differently. which I'm sure we'll get into in this podcast, but loss is loss. And so we encourage you to spend time, listen to our podcast, share it with other people, follow us on social media, get involved at whatever level you can, and refer people to us that may be able to experience what we do through documentaries and podcasts with others. So,
and to bounce off of Chip just a second, when he talks about the invitation for others to join us, I think that is so important to have different voices in this seat where you've got a professional grief counselor who can help facilitate the conversation with people who have suffered lots of different forms of grief. I only know, what kind of grief that I went through. But I know over the past couple of years, having really focused on this and how we can help people, you begin to realize how many different forms of tragic deaths, whether they're sudden, whether they are something that's gradual, that's played out over a period of time, ages. There's just so many different components that go into it that make it so different. And anybody who would sit in this seat with a different form of grief has a totally different perspective and experience that's helpful and meaningful to somebody, that would be much more helpful and meaningful than what I have to offer. So I think the invitation, making it open to others and to find different stories would be powerful as well.
Yeah, our intent is to grow the organization to help others. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can like and share, would be awesome. Visit us at our website, archwayofhope.org. We're on all social channels. You can follow us there. Our intent is to share solid information with people that are needing to hear this information and provide hope for those who have lost someone too early.